I got the termination email on a Tuesday morning while reviewing quarterly reports for the West Coast division. 16 years of running the most profitable unit at Kellerman Industries ended with a PDF attachment and 3 sentences from our new CEO, Brandon Shaw. The subject line read, "Transition of leadership effective immediately." The message itself was cold and corporate. My role was being eliminated as part of a restructuring initiative. Security would escort me out by noon. I read it twice, closed my laptop, and felt something ice-cold settle in my chest. My name is Victor Hastings. I'm 41 years old and I built the Western Division from nothing into a $47 million annual revenue machine. When I started at Kellerman Industries in 2008, we had 12 employees in a cramped office in Portland and barely broke even each quarter. I turned it into a powerhouse with 340 employees across 5 states, landing contracts with companies like Boeing and Tesla. My team loved me because I fought for their bonuses and promotions. The old CEO, Howard Kellerman, treated me like a son. Then Howard retired last year and his nephew Brandon took over. Brandon was 34 years old, Harvard MBA, never worked anywhere except his family's company. He spent his first 6 months reorganizing departments and replacing anyone who questioned his decisions. I watched good people get pushed out for younger, cheaper replacements. I knew my turn would come eventually. What Brandon didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this exact moment since the day he walked through our doors. The night Brandon was announced as CEO, I made copies of everything. Client contracts, vendor agreements, supplier contacts, proprietary processes I'd developed over 16 years. I stored it all on encrypted drives in my home office. I also did something else that seemed paranoid at the time but turned out to be genius. I registered a business entity called Hastings Solutions Group 6 months before Brandon fired me. Built a basic website, established business accounts, filed all the legal paperwork. Nobody at Kellerman knew about it. I also reached out quietly to our 3 biggest clients. Told them I was considering new opportunities and wanted to stay connected professionally. They all said the same thing. "Victor, if you ever leave Kellerman, call us first." Those relationships were mine, built over years of delivering results and solving their problems at 2 in the morning when emergencies hit. Brandon thought he was inheriting my client list. He was about to learn otherwise. The security guard who escorted me out was Tommy Rodriguez. We'd worked together for 9 years. He looked miserable as he walked me to my car with my box of personal items. "I'm sorry about this, Victor," he said quietly. "Brandon's cleaning house and nobody's safe anymore." I patted his shoulder and told him not to worry. 3 months later, Tommy would be working for me at triple his Kellerman salary, but neither of us knew that yet. I drove home to my apartment in downtown Portland and sat on my couch for exactly 20 minutes. Then I opened my laptop and sent 3 emails. The first went to Jacobson Manufacturing, our largest client, worth $18 million annually. The second went to Westfield Logistics, worth $12 million. The third went to Paramount Systems, worth $9 million. The message was simple and professional. I explained that I was no longer with Kellerman Industries and had launched my own consulting firm. If they needed continuity of service and someone who understood their operations intimately, I was available. All 3 responded within 4 hours. Jacobson's operations director, Angela Pruitt, called me directly. "Victor, thank God you reached out. We've been worried sick since we heard you were gone. Brandon sent some kid named Trent to our facility yesterday. He's 26 years old and doesn't know a supply chain from a bicycle chain. Can you start Monday?" I told her I could start immediately. She asked me to draft a proposal for the exact services I'd been providing through Kellerman, but now through my own company. Westfield's CEO, Martin Cross, was even more direct. He sent me a contract offer that same evening. "We're terminating our agreement with Kellerman effective in 30 days per our contract terms. We want you, Victor, not them. The relationship was always with you anyway." Paramount's purchasing manager, Diane Fletcher, said almost the same thing. "Brandon called here yesterday acting like he owns our business. Talked down to our team and made ridiculous promises he can't possibly keep. We're done with Kellerman the moment our contract allows. Within 48 hours of being fired, I had signed agreements worth $34 million in annual revenue. But I wasn't finished. I knew exactly which Kellerman employees were unhappy under Brandon's leadership because they'd been telling me for months. I started making calls. My former operations manager, Oscar Whitmore, answered on the first ring. He'd been at Kellerman for 11 years and Brandon had just cut his department budget by 40%. "Victor, I was hoping you'd call," Oscar said. "Half the team is updating their resumes. What are you planning?" I laid it out for him. I was building a competitor. I had the clients, the knowledge, and the capital from my savings to get started. I needed people I could trust, people who understood how to deliver results. Was he interested? Oscar didn't hesitate. "I'm in. When do we start?" Over the next 2 weeks, I recruited 14 key people from Kellerman's Western Division. Every single one accepted my offer. Most took pay cuts initially because my startup couldn't match Kellerman's salaries yet. But I promised them equity stakes and profit sharing once we were profitable. They believed in me because I'd never let them down in 16 years. Brandon had no idea what was happening. He was too busy restructuring and attending board meetings to notice that his best people were quietly disappearing. By mid-April, 2 months after my termination, Hastings Solutions Group had 15 employees, 3 major clients, and $34 million in contracted revenue for the year. We were operating out of a shared office space in southeast Portland, working 18-hour days and loving every minute of it. The energy was incredible. We were building something that belonged to us. Then Brandon started noticing the problems. Jacobson Manufacturing called Kellerman in late April to formally terminate their contract. They cited breach of service level agreements and failure to provide adequate support. Brandon apparently went ballistic in that meeting, threatening legal action. Jacobson's lawyers shut him down immediately. They had documentation of every missed deadline and failed delivery since I left. Westfield and Paramount followed within a week. Both cited similar performance failures and exercised their 30-day termination clauses. Brandon called me for the first time on May 3rd. I was in our office reviewing contracts when my phone rang from a number I recognized as Kellerman's main line. "Victor, this is Brandon Shaw. We need to talk about what you're doing." His voice was tight with anger. I leaned back in my chair and put him on speaker so Oscar could hear. "What am I doing, Brandon? I'm running my own business. You're stealing our clients and our employees. That's tortious interference and corporate espionage. We're filing suit." I smiled even though he couldn't see me. "Brandon, I didn't steal anything. Your clients chose to leave because you couldn't deliver the services I'd been providing for years. Your employees quit because you created a toxic work environment. Everything I've done is completely legal. I have 3 lawyers who've reviewed every single contract and communication. File whatever lawsuit makes you feel better, but you'll lose and it'll cost Kellerman a fortune in legal fees." He hung up without another word. The lawsuit came 2 weeks later. Kellerman Industries versus Victor Hastings and Hastings Solutions Group. They alleged breach of fiduciary duty, theft of trade secrets, tortious interference with business relationships, and about 6 other claims that sounded impressive but had no legal basis. Their attorneys were from Morrison & Blake, a big Portland firm that charged $800 per hour. I couldn't afford that level of representation, so I hired a smaller firm called Piedmont Legal Group. My attorney, Russell Grant, had spent 20 years handling employment and business disputes. Russell read through Kellerman's complaint and started laughing. "Victor, this is garbage. They're throwing everything at the wall hoping something sticks, but they don't have a case. You didn't sign a non-compete agreement, correct?" I confirmed that Howard Kellerman had refused to make employees sign non-competes because he thought they were un-American and bad for workers. Brandon never changed that policy. Russell nodded. "Then you're free to compete. The client relationships were yours, built over 16 years. Trade secrets? Everything you're using is either public knowledge or processes you personally developed. This gets dismissed." The discovery phase was where things got interesting. Kellerman's attorneys demanded all my files, communications, and business records. Russell filed a motion to compel Kellerman to produce the same. What came back was devastating for Brandon's case. Email after email showing Brandon's mismanagement, missed deadlines, and broken promises to clients. Documentation of employees complaining about hostile work environment issues. Records showing that after I left, project completion rates dropped 68% in the Western Division. Most damning were emails from Brandon to his management team discussing plans to replace expensive senior employees with cheaper recent graduates. Russell called me in June with an update. Victor, they're going to drop this lawsuit. Their own discovery materials prove you left because of constructive discharge and that clients left because of performance failures. If this goes to trial, we'll counterclaim for wrongful termination and probably win damages. I'm expecting them to quietly dismiss within 30 days. He was right. On July 9th, Kellerman's attorneys filed a notice of voluntary dismissal without prejudice. No settlement, no admission of wrongdoing, just a quiet retreat. By August, 6 months after my termination, Hastings Solutions Group had grown to 42 employees and $61 million in annual contracted revenue. We'd taken on 4 new major clients beyond the original 3 from Kellerman. Our office space expanded twice. I hired Tommy Rodriguez away from Kellerman Security to run our facilities operations. Hired Oscar's wife, Francine, who'd been Kellerman's best HR director, to build our human resources department. Every person who joined us brought expertise and relationships that made us stronger. Brandon's Western Division, meanwhile, was collapsing. Without the key people and major clients, revenue dropped 79% in 6 months. Kellerman's board started asking hard questions about Brandon's leadership. I heard through industry contacts that there were emergency board meetings and discussions about replacing him. The family connection was the only thing keeping him in place, but even that had limits when profits disappeared. Howard Kellerman himself apparently came out of retirement to review what had happened. The old man was furious. In September, I got a call from Howard. He asked if we could meet for coffee, just the 2 of us, off the record. We met at a small cafe in Northwest Portland on a Saturday morning. Howard looked older than I remembered, more tired. Victor, he said after we sat down, I owe you an apology. I handed my company to someone who wasn't ready and didn't appreciate what you built. Brandon made a catastrophic mistake firing you. I told Howard I appreciated that, but I'd moved on. Hastings Solutions was thriving and I was happier than I'd been in years. Howard nodded slowly. I understand, but I want you to know that Brandon is being removed as CEO effective October 1st. The board voted last week. He'll stay on in a non-operational advisory role because his family, but he won't have authority over personnel or client relationships anymore. We're bringing in outside leadership. I asked who they were considering. Howard smiled slightly. We're considering several candidates. Your name came up. Would you be interested in discussing a return to Kellerman in a leadership capacity? I thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. Howard, I respect you tremendously. You gave me my start and I'll always be grateful. But I'm not coming back. I built something that belongs to me and my team now. We're not answering to boards or family politics anymore. We're building exactly the company we want to work for. Howard looked disappointed but not surprised. He stood up and shook my hand. I understand. For what it's worth, Victor, you're going to be very successful. You already are. 1 year after Brandon fired me, Hastings Solutions Group hit $89 million in annual revenue with 73 employees. We'd become one of the fastest growing operations consulting firms in the Pacific Northwest. Brandon was no longer CEO of Kellerman Industries. Last I heard, he was working at his father-in-law's real estate development company in Seattle, far away from any operational responsibilities. The Western Division he destroyed never recovered. Kellerman eventually sold it off in pieces to competitors. Some of those pieces were bought by my clients, ironically enough. I kept the termination email Brandon sent me, framed it and hung it in my office as a reminder. Not a reminder of betrayal or anger, but of the moment when I stopped building someone else's dream and started building my own. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best opportunity you never knew you needed. Brandon thought he was eliminating an expensive senior employee. What he actually did was create his most effective competitor and destroy the most profitable division his family company ever had. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.